Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Pad Day, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I've got my guest, Kelly Harper. She's the Assistant Director of Digital Media at the University of Memphis in their athletic department. Kelly, I know we were talking off camera. It's busy season for you. You guys got softball coming up, so I appreciate you taking the time and spending it with me this evening.
Absolutely. I'm so excited.
For sure, for sure. And I want to kind of take it back to the beginning of when you really honed in or really started getting into sport. Can you talk about that moment, what your first interaction with sport was, what really drew you to sport overall?
Yeah, so it started when I was really young. My dad was actually a head coach, a swim coach actually,
Hmm.
at FSU whenever I was little. So
Okay.
growing up, I've lived in so many states. So I lived in Florida, Georgia, Arkansas, and then myself, Memphis. But through that time, I've
Yeah.
watched him coach,
Hmm.
and then it made me fall in love with the sports. But it's just all sorts of sports. He used to take me to a variety of games. So like football, baseball, basketball, you name it, I went to all the sports. So I think
Gotcha.
growing up with all of that, I think it made
Mhm.
me fall in love with the sports.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you mentioned you played a variety of sports, football, basketball. You went to a variety of games. I'm sure you played a variety of sports throughout your childhood as well. But what would be kind of one? I know it's hard when it comes to one core memory, but what is one real core memory of your youth sport days when you played youth sport that comes sticks out?
I think I think one of them is definitely swimming. Since
Hmm.
my mom and dad both swam in college, I
Gotcha.
just them being like, okay, since we both swam in college and through their whole life, why don't you just go do swimming? And I tried to do swimming and I was like,
Hmm.
this might not be for me, but and then my sister also swam, so watching her swim. But then as we got older, she
Hmm.
actually she actually played volleyball in college, went to
Gotcha.
college at a NAIA school.
Hmm.
So I actually followed into her footsteps in playing volleyball, playing
Okay.
club and everything else. So I think me falling in love with sports and volleyball all at the same time. But I love all sports. There's not one sport I do not like. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. And you jumped into the following in your sister's footsteps into college, but I wanted to talk about your high school experience playing sport. What like I know you said you loved all sports. Was there one in particular that drove you in high school that you really focused on? Was like what was your high school experience around sport?
I think volleyball and swimming were both definitely involved a lot. I think just
Mhm.
playing and then having friends involved, but also being close with everyone. I think with my parents both also swimming and coaching all at the same time, it's like I got to see different varieties of friends, but also the sport itself.
Yeah, that's having that variety, having that perspective, it is important, and it's an important piece into to what sport. I read this the other day that sport really defines a lot of people and who they are and kind of how they live their life, and that's true of both of us and especially yourself in how you've done that. But that's an important perspective to have in that regard, and at Memphis, and we'll get into your collegiate experiences in that regard. But you're the assistant director, as I mentioned earlier, of digital media. When did you start getting into kind of the digital media space? What really drew you to sports media and the media side in sport?
Yeah, so I was in college. I was about a sophomore or junior in college at the University of Arkansas.
Uh-huh.
And I was trying to find my little place at Arkansas, saying what would make me happy? What can I do to get myself into sports? Um,
Yeah.
because I got my degree in Bachelor in Science, but then I got my major in Recreation and Sports Management. So I was like,
Gotcha.
what can I do to have fun in school, but also get me involved in sports?
Yeah.
With that, I think I found a place called Razorback Sports Network. That's where I got
Mm,
started. And
gotcha.
I did replay operations. I worked with ESPN, ESPN Plus, SEC Network. And
Gotcha.
where it started was that they were looking for content people to do videos. And I said, hey, I would love to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And we're missing some of that. And I think for me, as my dad was as he is the swim coach, he was looking for someone to make his intro video for swimming and
Mm,
diving. And
yeah.
so I was like, hey, might as well try it, right?
Yeah.
But of course, since he is my dad, but he's also the head swim coach. So I wanted to please him as my dad, but I also wanted to please him as a coach too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
to get both of those sides. And
And
I
it's
said,
tough, right? Like, to balance, I'm sure your dad's felt this, balance the dad hat and the head coaching hat and kind of putting
right,
those aside when you're, or
right,
making sure you're balancing both at the same
right.
time. Um,
Absolutely. And so like for me, I was like, okay, I want to make him proud, but I also have to do this as a student and say, hey, I can do this as well. And so for me, it was just like, okay, I want to try this and just
yeah.
being behind the scenes of that and asking, hey, does this look okay or does this not look okay? And he's actually pretty honest with me and he's
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I did like this and I didn't like this. And I'm like, okay, let's make those changes. And I think
Yeah.
that's when I fell in love with it was that getting those behind the scenes and understanding that, you know,
That understanding the what I mean, and in college athletics, it's so key to really tailor to what coaches wants and needs, and kind of how they want things structured, and how and like I said, your dad balancing the head coach hat and the dad hat
right.
for external individuals in college athletics and college athletic departments. They really have to balance the needs of the department and the needs of the coaches and what they expect and what they want. So it's great that you got that early start at the University of Arkansas.
Mhm.
And can you talk about you talked about sophomore junior year you got started in the Razorback Network and SEC Network and ESPN, ESPN Plus. Can you talk about those experiences and how those have shaped uh, how you've evolved into who you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's being able to be comfortable, but being also uncomfortable at the same time. Because
Mhm.
as a student, you're like, wait, I don't know what I really want to do yet. And
Yeah.
for me, I was like, well, where do I start? Where do I begin? How do I get into this? And I think just having a passion for sports can get you involved in a lot of things because it's
Yeah.
not one thing, it's multiple things. So
Hmm.
so where replay operator is if you go on your TV and you watch a sports game and they said, "Oh, let's go look back at it." And they watch the replay. So I'd be the operation person going back and slowing it
Hmm.
down
Yeah.
and there's other things like there's scoreboard operation and there's just multiple different things. And I think with that, it's just there's so many opportunities that the school can provide for you. You just
Yeah.
gotta little clubs or little things for yourself. Just say, hey, what can I do? And I
Hmm.
do that to make myself feel like, hey, I love doing this and I can do it too.
For sure, for sure. And you bring up a good point of contact for young, and I'll kind of get, we at the end of our episodes always ask for advice, and we'll kind of, I'm jumping the gun here, but I like the points that you made there, in terms of just jumping in, and there's so many different opportunities with just having a passion. And I think that's the, I can't say issue, but I think that's the struggle for a lot of students of where do I start? How do I begin? And it's just jumping in. Like you said, it's just jumping in honestly, and diving off. I was told when I got in is dive off the deep end, and and see what happens, and trial by fire, another phrase that has been used when I was in there. And so it, like you said, it's an important piece of what you bring up is just going after it and just doing it, and then you kind of build off of that. And it's great to kind of see how you've evolved in your career, and kind of how you've gotten to that point. And then you end up at, and I want to kind of transition to where you're at now, with your role at Memphis. Can you talk a little bit about your role at Memphis, and kind of your day to day at Memphis?
Yeah, so I'm the assistant director of digital media. So what I do is I am the assistant to my director,
Mm,
and I help with any I can help with press conferences after a game, or for example, like we have a press conference tomorrow with Penny Hardaway, the head men's basketball coach,
yep.
and I'll go in tomorrow and record that so that um, we have those set out for the school website, for
Hmm.
our YouTube, Memphis Athletics YouTube, and
Gotcha.
to get those messages out. And
Hmm.
then I'll also tomorrow have a meeting with some sports like softball, for example. Our season's about to start.
Yeah.
I'll have all these plans out for softball and what we need to do. Like we'll have media day,
Hmm.
and I'll set all that up with our coaches and get a little one-on-one with them and seeing what I can do to help. And
Hmm.
getting content and seeing like, hey, what can we do for this week? Hey, what can we do for that week? And I'll come up with some ideas for content so we can post on social
Yep.
and be doing that. And there's a lot of things I do with my job, but those are the easiest examples I can give you of day to day.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And it's a lot of, coordinating. And I know, I mean, I interned in various athletic departments, and I realize it's a lot of coordinating different activities. And like you said, it's a lot of just create content creation is a key piece now in college athletics, and that's key. And then it's great to kind of see what you guys are doing over there at Memphis Athletics. And like you said, tomorrow you've got, I mean, you're busy throughout. I mentioned you guys got softball, and you guys are busy, but I know you guys are always busy throughout the season and even into the off season. Really, you can't really call it an off season. We're always working, and we're always as sport professionals, you're always getting best content, the best possible way to represent the department, and that's always great to see. And so, before I in the podcast, before I get to the end, I always ask, you've had, like you said, you've been in a variety of different states, you've had a variety of different experiences related to sport. But throughout your life, throughout your career so far, what's one piece of advice that really stands out to you that you've gotten?
Mhm. Well, I think the best advice I can give is just be yourself. And
Hmm.
I think just if you set your mind to it, you can do
Yeah.
it. And be confident. Be confident who you are. You have so many things to give out. Like just go out and do it. And I
Yeah.
think that I've learned from my parents is that if you want something, you're a go-getter, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And I think if you want it, you can. And nothing is impossible.
And I mean, yeah, like nothing. I love that, right? Nothing. If you really want it, you got to. And it's kind of a common theme that we've talked about today is you really got to get your feet wet. If you really want it, if you're really passionate about it, then you can go for it, and then everything else will fall into place how it is. And again, it's been great looking at and researching kind of you and figuring out where you've been and who you are, and your career trajectory and where it's taken you. And I like I said, I wish the best for you. I wish the best moving forward in your career at Memphis and beyond. So, but it's all the time we have for this episode of the Athlete Insights podcast, Kelly. Again, I want to thank you for coming on and spending a couple minutes with me talking about your career, reflecting on your career. And again, like I said, I wish you the best. I hope you have hope you have a fantastic future, and you have a bright future ahead in that regards. And again, want to thank you for coming on. I'll have your social media linked on the video. I'll also have Memphis Athletics linked in the video. So if you guys want to follow Memphis Athletics and see all the cool things that Kelly and the folks at Memphis are doing, you guys can check that out, and you can follow Kelly as well. You can follow my podcast anywhere you get a podcast: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere, like I said, anywhere a podcast exists, you'll find this one. But once again, Kelly, want to thank you for coming on, and we'll see you next time.